To tell us a little bit more about this eruption near Tonga, Professor Richard Arculus is with the ANU's School of Earth Sciences. He joins us now. Professor, thank you for your time. We've seen the satellite images. They will look to be, to a layperson like me, what looks like a very large eruption. But can you put into context just how significant this event is?
Yes, it's probably one of the largest, most explosive events around the Ring of Fire for a long time. Probably the closest equivalent would have been Mount Pinatubo in 1991 in the Philippines. But this one, because it's either at or just below sea level, has a lot of different effects compared with the Pinatubo eruption.
What kinds of effects does that have? We know communications to Tonga are very difficult right now. So do we know much about the impact it's had there?
Well, as one of your previous experts, Dave Tappin, commented, the eruption of Krakatau in the straits between Java and Sumatra in 1883 led to enormous tsunamis spreading out from around the site of the volcano. And this has generated some, well, they're not huge compared with the Sumatran earthquake the order of 20 years ago, but given the low-lying lands that most people live on in Tonga, a 1 to 2 meter tsunami is serious. But the longer enduring threat might be that more could happen. The tsunami threat may not be finished. And also if the volcano collapses underwater, that in itself as a submarine landslide can cause more trouble. So it's wise to keep a watch and act attitude to this particular volcano.
Can you just tell us a little bit about this undersea volcano, its geography and the features and what makes it so so dangerous at the moment?
Well, interestingly enough, there are a large number of submarine volcanoes in the Kingdom of Tonga and their maritime area. There's the order of 30 to 40 submarine volcanoes, as well as the volcanoes that emerge from water. And we've only known about these during the last 20 years. So in terms of, well, how big are they? They rise thousands of meters from the adjacent seafloor. Some of them break surface, some of them don't. Some of them are struggling to maintain an above surface presence. And there have been, for example, ejections of large pumice rafts, which drift across the Pacific westwards. And many of the listeners will be aware that if they look on the beaches of Eastern Australia, they can pick up chunks of this pumice that have come from the various eruptions in the Tonga-Kermadec submarine chain. I'm sure we'll see some pumice drifting in from Hunga Ha'apai over the next weeks to months.
How regularly does it erupt? Have we seen activity from this volcano recently?
Yes, in the last 20 years. For example, in 2004, I was part of a team that took Australia's Marine National Facility research vessel, which was at that time the Southern Surveyor. It's now been replaced. But we took the Southern Surveyor and mapped all the submarine volcanoes that we could come across in the Kingdom of Tonga and northwards. And at that time, there was no island. If you look at the images that are being shown about the volcano immediately prior to the eruption, there were 2 islands remnant from a previous cone, and a new cone had grown over the last 20 years. That's probably all disappeared, and I wouldn't be surprised if the 2 islands remnant from a previous volcanic structure have not also been destroyed. But it has been erupting. It's made this new island in the same way that there's a new Krakatau emerging between islands that were the remnant of a previous structure. This volcano has been growing over the last 20 years, but nothing as big as this current event.
And indeed nothing that's seen impacts that we're now seeing quite literally halfway around the world, including on the east coast of Australia. So what can we expect to see happen from here?
Well, that is a very hard question to answer. It could be that it's a big bang and everything settles down. Alternatively, it could be the precursor to something else, that some continuing eruptions take place. Quite often, eruptions like this are preceded by small ejections of fragmented volcanic material, a lot of seismic activity, then a big eruption, and then a sequence, if you like, a decay sequence of eruptions that are not as big as the first one. But that's not the universal rule, and we haven't been around long enough to watch how this volcano can behave over the thousands and thousands of years of its construction. So, Casey, I'm sorry I can't tell you exactly what might happen next. It's because we don't have a long enough record to know, and its current activity could be an unusual event in terms of the length of time humans have been observing it.
So it may be a complete surprise about whether this eruption, was enough to settle down the system. We may just not know. Is there anything that we can use to measure or guess if we should be concerned about, future eruptions?
Well, the key things generally when you're looking at a volcano like this are seismic activity, which you can use to determine what's happening in the crust below the volcano, magma movements. But I doubt that the Tonga seismic network has enough seismographs around, most of which would have to be submarine, to be able to monitor accurately that process. Another thing is inflation of the volcanic structure or deflation. So when a volcano is taking magma recharge from below the surface of the ground, the ground tends to rise up as the magma injects into the crust. But you need the appropriate instruments to be able to do that. And I doubt that Tonga-Hunga is surrounded by those, if you like, tilt meters and inflation meters. And the other thing is emissions from the vent, how the gases might be changing, all of which are very difficult to apply in a volcano like this in the middle of the sea.
Professor Richard Arculus from ANU, really thank you for your insights. Obviously still a bit to play out here. We don't even know really the full impact of this eruption on Tonga, so much to watch here. But thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure.